Alright guys, weekly update. I'm filming it on Wednesday instead of Tuesday like I normally would, because I had to spend some time at the urgent care clinic yesterday because my 4-year-old decided to split his chin open at school. So he got 3 stitches right here, and now he's going around telling everybody he's got a beard because there's 6 little sprigs that are, you know, not quite a quarter of an inch long sticking out from his chin. So with that, let's roll into the week. So last week we had kind of moved things around a little bit. So instead of doing a medium long run on Monday and then, you know, the track workout on Wednesday and then doing the long run on Saturday, you know, so you get 2 days of recovery between the track workout and the long run, my wife went out of town. She went out of town for the weekend, so instead of paying for a babysitter for a good long chunk of time for me to do a long run on Saturday, I just backed it up to Friday, and Julie was nice enough to take the kids to school, both of them. I think Lucy rode the bus, maybe. Anyway, she took Andrew to school, which is the big thing, so that I didn't have to wake up at like 4 in order to get 16 miles in before taking them to school. So, thank you, dear. The support network, very important if you're marathon training, guys. It's probably the most important part. It might even be more important than recovery, because without them, you cannot even do the training. Make a note of that. So, the big thing is here for the key workouts, since the last time we checked in, Wednesday was just a bunch of striders, really. We warmed up, then we did 20 sets of 100 meters at about, it was supposed to be mile pace, with a 100-meter recovery and then a cool down and then a lift. My left hip, though, like my glute, like it just, something was catching, it just wasn't firing quite right. And so instead of being at like 5-minute pace, most of them were like closer to 5:20 pace, but it was, by the end, it was kind of moving and grooving and turning over, and it was feeling better. Yeah, it like, I got a little bit of an impingement on my SI, I think is what's going on. Because I noticed it again this morning doing my hill sprints. But by the end of the workout, it's feeling good. You know, and then I ended up getting a 3.5 mile cool down in, so totaled 9 miles. We did some, like an easy recovery day on Thursday, just like an easy half hour or something like that. Friday, instead of doing like some easy miles and then meeting Julia to lift, because she was, you know, getting to campus, getting stuff done, and jetting over to Texas, you know, I just did my own thing in the morning, and so I had to do that long run. So originally it was supposed to be a total of 16 miles with the last 6 at marathon pace. Now I think I probably didn't quite eat enough on Thursday, but it ended up being 10 easy, 4 at marathon pace, which is really like about 2.5 marathon effort, and then a 1.5 mile at threshold effort, and then a 2-mile death march after stopping in the shade because it got hot. Even though I started fairly early, like it was still toasty, and I just got dehydrated. Like I was down at least 5 pounds, I think, when I got back. So I mean, over half a gallon of water I lost to sweat despite taking my handheld with me. And it didn't feel that hot when I started, but I think just by the time we were getting done, and like I was trying to do the quality part, and I ran on the South Greenway, so I wouldn't have to deal with traffic. I had some shade, but then like almost as soon as I got off the Greenway and started coming home while still working hard, yeah, it was about about 3.2 miles into the marathon effort. I was like, yep, my heart rate's too high. Like, I'm working too damn hard. And it was, because looking back on the data, my heart rate was, like, got up to about 176 at about that point. Way above marathon effort for me. That's closer to threshold effort. And so, it's funny, because looking at the data, and I'll try to show it down here, is you can tell when I made that decision because my turnover rate goes up. And I just was like, well, if I'm not getting marathon effort, we're going to full send it. We're going to go ahead and go threshold effort. We're just going to turn it over and motor and do some quality work to 14. So we get 4 miles of quality work in on the tail end of the long run, and then a 2-mile cool down on the way home, to kind of jumpstart that recovery and start the recovery process, because I knew I was going to need it. But yeah, that was rough, man. Then Saturday, uh, you know, didn't get out till about 8 o'clock in the morning because I wasn't going to make high school freshman get up stupid early to come babysit for 45 minutes so I could go get a recovery jog in. But the babysitter came over, hung out with the kids in the backyard for 45 minutes while I got my recovery run in, and then busted home. And then Sunday, again, I waited till Julia got home because she got home on Sunday evening. So I waited for her to get home instead of like trying to find a babysitter in the morning on a Sunday kind of deal. And so, it was warm, but, it was just a real quick, short little run. It was fine, easy peasy, just to kind of set me up for 11 miles on Monday. And Monday's 11 miles felt way better than the previous week's 11 miles. Okay, I got to say that hands down. And part of that, I think I did a better job hydrating and eating on Sunday. It may have also been because there were 2 days between the long run on Friday and the medium long run on Monday. Now, that being said, the first 5.5 miles was work. Like, it just felt like a slog, just kind of meh. But I was running in the neighborhood instead of trying to deal with running up the greenway in the dark and rolling my, like, I was just like, I know I can get a 5.5 mile loop in the neighborhood, and it'll be rolling hills. Like, there's not going to be any pancake flat sections, but there's not any huge climbs or, more importantly, huge descents to jam my hip. And so with that SI issue that I had the week before, and I can just stop at the house at the halfway point, refill the handheld, and keep going. And so I ended up not even taking a goo. I started with Tailwind in my handheld, and I just filled it up with water, at the halfway point. Got to see the kids in the morning before they went to school, so just got to say goodbye to Julia real quick while I stopped in, refilled, and then out the door. But I had a realization while I was doing that is, like, I was feeling like there was, like, it's like I just haven't been feeling fit lately. And I know part of that is because, like, mileage has been coming up to mileage levels I haven't run in a couple of years, We ended up getting 52 miles total last week. I'll probably hit about 55-ish this week, something like that, which is it's more than I've done consistently in a while. So I know that's part of it. But when I dug back into we'll come back to that in a second. So on the second half of the medium long run on Monday, I just decided to get the wheels turning over a little bit and not push, but just kind of work on being a little quicker. Because historically, being at 7:20 to 7:30 pace, like, it just feels better for me than running at like 7:45, closer to 8-minute pace. Like, it just feels clunky. And sure enough, as soon as, like, heading out the door, I was like, woohoo! And psychologically, like, the sun was just starting to come up, so there's a little bit of that. Still not any traffic in the neighborhood, just because of where we live. But that second loop, which I varied a little bit compared to the first one, but fundamentally I was running on the same roads, same hills. Like, it just felt better. And I don't know how much part of that was like a psychological shift with being like, I'm on the second half, I just got 5.5 miles to do. Or if it was because I was moving at a quicker tempo, and like, it just felt better, like biomechanically. And because I've spent decades running at 7:20, 7:30 pace, and this spring training for the half, I spent a lot of time running like easy runs, routinely be 7:15, 7:20 pace, felt fine, right? So as long as it's not too hot to where my core temperature is getting up, like, it feels good to run that quickly as opposed to a little slower. And I think that just fits me a little better, and it felt much, much better. And so, we got done. I ended up not lifting at all on Friday because I was pretty gassed. I originally intended on lifting in the middle of the day when I got done at Cardio Crushers. But then I was really hungry when I got done at work, so I just came home. Trying to lift when you're hungry is just not ideal. So I came home, ate lunch, and kind of did the thing. And started looking at the data, kind of like looking over stuff. And what I noticed, because this isn't something like, I don't normally track my fitness score on Strava. Like, it's just number. I don't really pay attention to it a ton. But July and August, part of that was like we didn't really have a lot of childcare, so like stress levels were up, training levels were down a little bit. Like I intentionally dropped the training down a little bit after half marathon training in the spring, and then doing some 5K work in the summer, early summer, before going to New Hampshire for the 4-miler on the 4th. Like we intentionally backed off. We went to the beach. While we were at the beach, I drank a beer a day. Like I don't normally drink a lot of beer. Actually, I can't. It's been a couple weeks since I've had one, at least 2 or 3 weeks, at least I think. But the point being, like it is essentially my chill time because that's required before getting into the marathon training block. Otherwise, when you're deep in the training block, like psychologically, it's really tough, right? So you need that psychological break. So, like I knew there was going to be some loss of fitness, but according to the fitness score on Strava, it was a big fitness loss. Like, went from like 90 something to 60 something or something like that. That's a big drop. And what I noticed when I started really digging into it a little bit is we didn't do a lot of threshold work while doing the 5K training coming off a half marathon training, right? Because we were doing like a bunch of interval training, 5K pace stuff, developing some speed and power, but we didn't do a ton of actual threshold work. And again, historically, like I respond pretty well to threshold work. And I just hadn't been doing a bunch. And so I think that's where that loss of that, like that aerobic engine, like I need that threshold work to do that. So we're going to make sure we're hitting that more frequently. We're going to be doing that anyway, doing marathon training, but we're going to be hitting that a little more frequently, along with, the goal marathon pace stuff at, about 6:30 pace, getting set up for that 350. Because, Friday was warm, but it should not have been that hard to hold 6:30 pace. Like, it shouldn't have. Even being dehydrated, like, it felt like my heart rate got up to almost 180 on the tail end of it. Like, that's threshold work, not marathon pace work. So, that's the moral of the story from this week is threshold training is important for marathoning, and it makes marathon pace feel easier. And like it develops the engine. It increases your capacity to run quickly, with less effort, right? Like the intervals, the super fast stuff, the repeats, like they're important. They develop some important things. But for marathoning, most of us aren't limited by our maximal speed and our maximal power output. We're limited by our capacity to keep going at a certain effort. And that's what threshold training is really good at developing. So despite Ingebrigtsen dropping out at the 10K mark in Copenhagen, but that was, the day or the 2 days after like winning a race at a shorter distance on the track. So, point being, I know I respond well to threshold training. It really helps me develop my engine, my ability to like run at a low effort, at high tempo for an extended period of time. So we're going to be doing a little more of that, and we'll probably be breaking those marathon pace efforts up into shorter chunks so we can get more total marathon pace work in during the long run without going all the way to the well and really tanking ourselves. And we'll save the like real marathon progression stuff for a little bit later in the training block. But we still hit 52 miles for the week. It's still 16 miles for the long run. So yeah, I think we're 16 weeks out, something like that, 17 weeks. I don't know. I'm not really paying attention at this point. I'm just doing the train. I wrote the plan. Now I just got to follow it, and I got to tinker with it as required. So, how's your training going? Let me know. Smash the like, subscribe button down below. Follow along. And if you know somebody who's interested in this kind of stuff, shoot this to them. Because there's probably going to be some rambling. Because, as I kind of like digging into the weeds and second guessing myself, because that's what happens when you're self-coached, is you can't just be like, okay, coach, and go do the thing. You're always second guessing and analyzing how this thing went and what could have gone better, and like how the next week's training needs to change, because that's the coach's job, right? That's the coach's job, is to fiddle with that kind of stuff. And so if you're the athlete and the coach, you got to do both parts, and that can be difficult. So we're going to work on being a little more mentally tough and developing that engine with the threshold work. So until next week, guys, train smart.